So thank you for giving me that opportunity to present to you a new report by UIL. It's interesting to present that report in the context of a session on micro certification badges and all those tools, because they're not mainstream within the policy discourse and the policy development within UNESCO and UIL more in particular. But in that report, which aimed to cast a wide perspective, the widest perspective as possible on learning, we did refer to micro certification and badges. So the link is there, and it's interesting to have the occasion to present it to a crowd and more familiar with badges. To produce that report, UIL got together a transdisciplinary and plurisectorial group of experts to think about education and learning, but from also perspective beyond education. That group worked early spring, and the report was published in September. The vision in the report, there's the exercise to try to imagine what learning would be in 2050, and we framed that vision and walked back from 2050 and now, and ask ourselves, what should we put in motion in 2050 if everything goes well and that vision becomes a reality? Learning would be ingrained and embedded in all spheres of life. The awareness of the potential of learning would be part of our daily life and daily work and spheres. The working group not only tackled the vision perspective of lifelong learning, trying to envision learning in 2050, but did not stay only at the philosophical or futurology dimension of thinking, but try to encapsulate action point that would have to be put in motion right now in the decade ahead for such a vision to concretize itself in 30 years from now. So you will find in the report 10 action point. The first one is about a holistic understanding of lifelong learning, and I underlined it previously. We have to view learning in all its diversity of learning site. We also have to strengthen learners to be able to manage their own learning and to go beyond learning to learn, but to be competent as a 21st century learner who has the ability to manage one's own learning biography, learning trajectory, and understanding one's learning needs, and understanding the wide field of learning possibilities and educational offer, and be able to select and negotiate according to one's learning style and condition. So that holistic understanding was a big part, including recognition, validation, and accreditation mechanism. And that's where badges fit in that vision, to have a wider also perspective of the site, recognizing learning beyond school, and the tools available to do so, including badges. From a UNESCO perspective, learning is located within as an answer, as a tool and a resource to challenge major challenges, from climate change to discrimination to inequalities of development at country level, within country, and at individual level, and racism, discrimination. So we need a transdisciplinary take, an intersectorial perspective on learning, to be able to muster the wide diversity of learning possibility to answer those social needs. So the vision proposed in the report call for going beyond the sphere of education in understanding the challenges in front of us. The third action regards more particularly vulnerable groups. There is major inequality at the planetary level, among countries, within countries, and even if in in North country, about 2/3 of the population could have post-secondary education, so have a strong basis, and there's a marginalization of people without a diploma. Around the world, some countries have more than 50% of their population who are technically illiterate. So inequality, answering vulnerable groups is a major take, and we have to master every resources, every technology to allow those groups to learn what they need to learn. Fourth action is about kind of an answer to the role of the state, and it's an ongoing thread of thinking within UNESCO, that common good perspective, public good perspective, and lifelong learning should be a common good perspective, and not only a market-based environment where the ones who have strong learning capital and capital, financial capital per se, can access to all the possibilities and benefit from the tools available. But we have to make it a common good. And in that regard, the common-based approach is interesting because it's a new mode of governance, citizen-based governance, that's been tested, developed, and experimented also in the world of education. So the report is calling UNESCO and member states to inspire themselves from those common base and new governance, participatory and democratic governance understanding. And necessarily, especially in regard of the digital learning tools and economy, we have to engage with the corporate sector. It would not be an easy discussion, but we have to make the argument for common good to a corporate sector, and especially regarding digital learning possibilities that is gaining, especially in the past 6-7 months with the pandemic. They're really enriching themselves, and like Zoom, the platform we're using right now. Fifth action point, equitable access to learning technology. And in the discussion of the expert group and what got translated in the report, we propose that digital technology would be at the service of lifelong learning in a common and public good perspective for the benefit of all. And we propose that UNESCO launched an official initiative towards 2050 digital learning technology for the common and the public good, to continue that discussion with private sector, and including and enlarging the discussion to all the different initiatives that exist that are community-based, locally based, and that proposes digital tools in an open source and freely accessible for all. The sixth action is more how school, university have to transform themselves to become truly lifelong learning agents, and go way beyond offering MOOC and distance learning to really be an actor, an agent of lifelong learning, and offering from programs, long program to micro learning to accreditation, etc., etc. The collective dimension of learning was interesting also in the report, because there's a new learning sites, citizen learning from each other through digital platform or through other means. And there's not only schools, there's not only the internet, but there's people in a peer-to-peer perspective learning from each other. So that collective dimension has to be part of our understanding and construction of a culture of lifelong learning from now till 2050. Local and municipality-based lifelong learning initiative are important. And for those who might not know, there is within UNESCO a global network of learning cities. There's hundreds of cities part of the network, and it's a very vibrant network, and mayors are assuming a strong leadership in their countries and within the network to create a lifelong learning culture. So they are a new agent, they are interesting. They're not a classic and traditional agent in the sphere of education, but they can muster not only not only they can coordinate school-based resources on their territory, but they can also assume a leadership, a cultural leadership, and become learning cities and reflexive cities. 9 action point, the world of work necessarily is major. And in the report, we tackle some challenges that should be faced, and and go beyond episodic learning. Enterprises, businesses have to be to make the shift towards a culture of learning and capacity development that goes beyond scheduling classes once in a while to answer really specific need, but really to be into professional development. And the last one is a major challenge to redesign lifelong learning as a human right. Right now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1946 affirm a right to education, but that's mainly understood as school-based, youth-oriented, and literacy, more or less, basic education, fundamental education for adults. Right now, we are in a totally new universe, not only just in regard of the public good. The state is not only the only actors, individuals who share freely their knowledges to others in perspective with a learning intention are also part, a tool, resources, part of the infrastructure, the public infrastructure, and there's a private market, and so we have to modernize and redesign that universal right to education to make it a lifelong learning right.